Welcome to Wellness Rebranded, the podcast where a dietitian, a personal trainer, and a mental health therapist get together to explore health and wellness from 3 different healing perspectives. I'm Elizabeth, registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor.
I'm Maria, licensed mental health therapist.
And I'm Tara, personal trainer. We believe in finding ways to nourish a healthy relationship with our mind and body, eating for well-being, not weight, finding joy in moving our bodies, and embracing and understanding our emotions. We are here to help you redesign your relationship with food, fitness, and yourself.
How great would it be if you got science-based guidance from qualified professionals instead of trying out conflicting, overhyped, and unproven trends?
If that sounds as awesome to you as it does to us, join us every week as we dig into strategies to enrich and enhance our day-to-day life and health.
And let's start rebranding your wellness journey.
Hi there and welcome. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to give a special shout out to 2 awesome ladies I met at a recent event, Kim and Kelly. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast and telling me you enjoy it. Your support means a lot, and we are thrilled to have you as part of our community. Keep tuning in and we'll keep bringing you valuable content. Speaking about valuable content, today I'm here with Tara, as usual.
Hello.
Elizabeth is on vacation, so she would not join us for this episode, but we have a guest that I personally and professionally love, respect, and love again, and love a little more, and then a little more. Her name is Marna Brickman, and she's a licensed clinical social worker, a grief specialist, and the co-owner of Guiding Therapy. This is a practice here in Annapolis. Marna offers comfort to those mourning the loss of any kind. And by the way, she was one of the speakers at my emotional fitness studio. She talked about how to navigate grief. So of course, we asked her to join us today on the podcast to learn more about this important topic. Welcome, Marna. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I couldn't be more excited.
I'm excited too. Such an important topic, you know. Reality is that at some point in our lives, we all experience the pain of grief, Marna.
Yes, in so many ways.
In so many ways, is part of life. And I love how you started that workshop with the Emotional Fitness Studio talking about the different kinds of loss, because usually we assume that maybe loss is just maybe that not just, but it only includes maybe the loss of a loved one or, you know, deaths of somebody, but there's so many other ways that we can experience loss. What are those?
Right. There's so many different ways. And if we can name them and let people know that it is grief you're feeling, even empty nest syndrome when your kids go off to college, the loss of a job, perhaps, the loss of your health, decline in your health.
Yeah.
Loss of your loved ones as you know them. They may not be gone, but they're declining, or they're not, you know, cognitively with you anymore, emotionally with you anymore. Moving, that's a big loss. A new home, a new city.
Yes.
Yeah.
So friendships that come and go. I mean, I feel like the past couple of years, we've all kind of had a big toll taken on us, and relationships have really suffered. And there's been a lot of loss. I think the loss of the safety we felt after COVID.
Wow.
We're not as secure in our life just because the pandemic scared us all. And that's a huge loss and something to grieve.
Yes. We had an episode in the past and we talked about the grieving aging. I never thought of aging as a way to experience. I mean, I knew it because when I see the wrinkles in the mirror, I kind of feel the loss of my young years. Yeah.
The loss of ability to do what we used to be able to do, even simple exercises or stretching up to get something out of the cabinet or getting out of bed easier, or just the loss of connection. You know, we've lost, and people are so into their screens, they're not really communicating with each other anymore. So I think we've lost relationships, just how things used to be.
It's a great point. So if this is something inevitable and we all experience it at some point, why are we not teaching this in schools? You know, like I know we should be learning this everywhere, anywhere, because if you're alive, you most likely, yes.
Right. Well, the problem I think with grief is no one wants to talk about it. It's kind of shushed and hidden. We don't see funeral processions that much. We don't see bodies in hearse that much. We don't talk that the decline in your health is a loss, that a relationship loss is a loss. So people just don't have the words to talk about it, or they feel they should be handling it better, or it's not okay to bring your discomfort to someone else's attention. So we keep it in. And that's what I think the biggest problem with grief is that you're not comfortable to talk about it. And then you feel alone and isolated and worse, because if we can talk about it, then we can get some help and we can get some tools and we can share our experience with somebody else, because it's normal. It's normal to feel how painful grief can feel. It's scary to let your kids go off to college. It's scary to get divorced. It's scary to move to a new city. And all these things need support. You need support in every area where you might experience some type of change. I feel like grief can be experienced with any type of loss and transition you have. And if we name it, then maybe we can bring some light to it and it won't be as painful.
So something that made me think of is I'm very open about my fertility journey, and I knew that I was going to have trouble conceiving when I turned 17. Was when I got diagnosed with polycystic ovaries. So for me, it's been like my entire adult life that I knew that conceiving would be hard. And so it's not been that stressful for me to like come to terms with that. But many, many, many of my friends, turned 35 and started trying to have babies and found out at that point that they had to do IVF and they had to do IUI and they had to do all these surgeries and fertility treatments and stuff. And so we were all kind of on that journey together. But for me, I was very super open about it because I view my ovaries not working well similarly to like the fact that I need contacts or the fact that I had braces or that I dye my gray hair. Right. But my friends don't always feel that same way. And it felt like this very like shameful secret. And then they kind of kept quiet about like, oh, we did a transfer and it didn't work. Like they're grieving the loss of like a potential new member of their family. But because it felt so like shameful for them, it had to be like this secret. And I watched them struggle with this for so long that for me, it made me even more motivated to like share my story and share my views that like everybody's body sucks sometimes, like whatever, that I feel like identifying that as actual grief is important.
Yeah. And for you to been so open about it helped you with your process. The ones that are hiding it and feel shame about it, they're not processing it as well. So you definitely had a little advantage because you were comfortable talking about it and you looked at it as just another thing that the body didn't work this time or in this area. And I think you probably dealt with it much better than the ones that kept it a secret and kept it feeling like a shameful thing that they had to hide.
Probably. Mostly, I just don't want it to be so shameful for people, because if it's not shameful, then we can talk about it and we can help with the healing.
When we talk about it, then it loses its shame. I feel like, you let it out, it gains, you put light on it and it loses the power to want to keep in the dark. We have to let it out and let people know it's normal. I'm experiencing this too. It's like, you too, me too. Like we just that connection, like I'm not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't until I like told everybody like, oh, I'm doing fertility treatments. I'm at Shady Grove. I just did this. That all my other friends were like, oh, me too.
Right.
Like before that, nobody was talking about it.
Right. That's the thing. Once you create that space, you create the opening for other people to feel comfortable talking about their journey, which is so great. So we need people to talk about it. I want everyone to talk about grief. There's more books coming out. Now there's sympathy cards for all types of losses. I don't know if you've noticed that in the card store. There's pet loss. Oh, I didn't even mention pet loss. Pet loss is a huge issue that people really struggle with grief. But there's loss on relationship, all the things that we discussed. But I think it's getting there. But it's not there yet. And people are still a little bit uncomfortable because if you lost someone, that means I can lose someone. If you're declining in health, that means I can decline in health. So people don't want to admit what could happen to them. So they'd rather kind of keep it at bay. But the more we talk about it, the less power it holds over us.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes me think of two things that I would love to cover on this episode. One, also the things that we put with grief. Like it makes me think that sometimes one thing that makes us not share is because we have sometimes these beliefs that grief should last a specific amount of time, right? We feel that if it's been 6 months or a year, then I should be over it. Right. So I want to debunk that myth that grief should last a specific amount of time. And the other thing, Marna, you guys made me think, is how we respond to grief from others, because that also plays a big role in how we talk to other people. Because I've had times that I share, you know, a loss of something, and then maybe the response could be like, well, but it
Could
was
be
just
worse.
a pet,
Right,
or
or
it could be worse, or it's just a pet, or hey, you know that kind of stuff. And as a society, I think I love to teach how to respond to these things, because it's a connection, you know, it all plays together for
Right.
us to be able to open and talk about grief. So
Yeah. I'll talk about that second point first. A lot of people struggle with the responses they get when they share about their grief. I had one client say, I wish I could write a book for all the stupid things someone said when my son died. You know, people, and I said, well, it is a shame. People don't know how to respond. So we get to teach them. We get to say, oh, it's harder than you can imagine, or just be with me, or just hug me, or there's nothing you need to say. I appreciate people trying, at least, even if it maybe it comes off wrong, or it seems stupid or insensitive, at least they're trying, instead of the people that just go silent and don't know how to say anything, and kind of avoid you for a couple months until you're over your grief, right? So I think if we can help people with what would be helpful for us, let people know what I need right now is a hug, what would be thoughtful is a card, what all you need to do is say you understand, or that you're with me. We just need to be companioned in our grief. We don't need to be fixed, or there's no magic wand to wave, which brings up the part about grief should have an expiration date. As you all know, grief does not have an expiration date. Our grief lasts and stays with us. The loss doesn't go away. We carry it with us. What I hope is that the pain gets more manageable. Like at first it's blinding you. You can't see anything, but then it clears and you carry it with you. Sometimes I like to think grief is a box I carry with me. The lid's on the box. Sometimes I open it up and I feel it and it all comes out oozing out, and I have tears and feel all the feelings, and I close the box, but it's always with you. And then you talk about the grief stages that we are supposed to go through linearly, but that doesn't really happen. You know, grief is messy, and grief is cumulative. You have one grief from 10 years ago, then you lose your pet now, and then you're crying about the one from 10 years ago, because they don't go away. They just pile up, and each one gets a little bit more poignant and painful. But hopefully we also learn how to take care of ourselves during these months, years of grief. And I think, you know, when people say after a year you should be over it, that's certainly not the case. There's the year of first that are especially painful: the first anniversary, the first Christmas, the first holidays, the first birthday. But then after the year, then you're like, oh my God, it's been a year since I've seen them and I miss them more, and you're longing to be with them. So the grief, it evolves, but it certainly doesn't go away. And what I hope we can do is find ways to take care of ourselves with our grief. And some of that self-care. That's what therapists always, you know, preach: self-care, take care of yourself, make sure you're getting the sleep that you need, morning walks, you need to regulate your rhythm so that you get good sleep, because that kind of reprocesses things at night so you feel better the next day. You need to talk to someone, you need to have a supportive community that you can share your feelings with. Talk therapy if needed, absolutely, to process. There's grief groups, and see where you are in your spiritual journey. Sometimes, you know, grief affects you in different ways: physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and socially. And sometimes it's that spiritual component that helps you through. If the folks that you need aren't there for you, maybe something bigger can be there for you, or there's something you can look to that brings you comfort. But I think whatever you can do to take care of yourself and normalize it, it's so normal. Whatever you're feeling, grief makes you feel crazy. You get brain fog, you're distracted, you read the same page over and over again, you forgot why you came into the room. You know, emotionally, your emotions can be happy, sad, despair, angry. People don't realize how much anger plays a part in grief, because you feel so out of control. You've lost something so important, and it kind of destabilizes you. So anger comes up and you get snippy sometimes. And then you drop to the despair. So the emotions are all over the place. I say grief comes in waves. You go up, you go down. Sometimes the wave knocks you on your ass, and sometimes you can ride it out, but they always subside. They really do. And you have to kind of have some tools in place to take care of yourself when the grief waves are coming. Socially, sometimes you want to connect with people and feel everyone around you, and sometimes you want to isolate. Just I can't be around people. So it gets you a couple of different ways. Like I said, and physically, you know, you might feel sick to your stomach, tightness in your chest, tightness in your throat. So it gets you coming and going, and you have to find ways to take care of yourself. And I think sleep, drinking water, regulating, exercise, all the things you can do that we know are good for us are especially important during the grieving process.
Marna,
I lost my dad like 10 years ago, And of course, it was super difficult. You know, he was my best friend, whatever, you know, typical grief stuff. But I found that I was good most of the time. But where I really struggled was I was commuting to Baltimore and being alone in the car, like with my thoughts, was like
Ugh,
so hard for me. So I actually found a podcast that was like super, super applicable to my job. And luckily, the episodes were like hours long. So I would like get in the car and I'd be commuting like 3 hours a day. And as soon as I got in the car, I'd put the podcast on and I would be so engrossed in like learning that I wasn't like sobbing all the way to work anymore.
yeah,
And it got to the point where my car, this was like the olden days, right? Didn't have like a Bluetooth connection for my phone. So I like went to Best Buy and bought this little like external speaker that you can clip onto your visor just so I wouldn't have to be like alone with my grief. So I could like distract myself into something else. And it actually worked out really good for me because one, I wasn't crying all the time. And also I was learning a ton of important information that I needed for my career. So I would like get to work and see direct application to what I was learning. So it inspired me to keep listening even more.
that's
And then over time, you know, like
it does
got
get
easier.
better, they say. One, I'm surprised you're able to retain what you're listening to in that state. That's great that that was helpful for you at that time. And they do say over time it gets softer. Like it's like I like the analogy of grief. Grief is like beach glass, glass so harsh, but over time it's tussled in the sand and the waves, and it gets
Yeah.
soft. It's still glass, it can still be painful, but it does. The edges soften, and in time, a lot of time, grief does get easier to cope with. But man, it's a hard one. It's such a heartbreak, and none of us are going to get out of this life without dealing with it. We have to know how to deal with it. We all are going to experience a loss, painful, sudden, long drawn out. All the ways we can lose something and
Yeah.
someone painful. So if we can know how to deal with it and have the support to deal with it, that's what we need, support, not do it alone.
There are three things that stayed with me, Marna, that from what we've said so far. One, and it caught my attention when you said it at the workshop, and now it struck me again. I love it. Grief is messy.
Grief
That
is
we don't have to find order in it or have to expect that it happens a certain way. I love that, to give ourselves permission for our grief to be messy, because it can be.
Mhm.
Two, that the range of emotions that come with it
Mhm.
is grief. It can be a cocktail of so many different things, unique for each person. So we cannot even compare griefs, obviously,
Exactly.
because it's so different.
Right.
And the third one is how it can be cumulative.
Yes.
Sometimes we even think like, why am I crying for something that happened, like you said, 10 years ago? And then we kind of guilt ourselves into, why am I not over it? And well, because you don't have to be over it completely. That grief just changed with you, but it stays with you.
There, it stays with you.
Mhm.
Still there.
Mhm.
So sad. So sad. So grief is cumulative, comprehensive, and
Messy.
messy. And messy. Definitely.
And the other word with self-care that came to mind that has worked for me, self-compassion,
Yeah.
allowing
Yeah.
yourself to just experience and feel whatever it is that you need to feel, even that anger and irritability that comes with pain sometimes is like, okay, my body is responding to something that I'm going through that hurts,
Hurt.
that brought a change.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people saying they don't want to cry because they're afraid they'll never stop. They get so caught up in how painful the grief is, but you've got to let the tears out. You've got to express the feelings. And it is interesting what you said. It's different for different people. Siblings can lose a parent and react differently, and friends can lose a friend and react. So it's so personal, and grief can be expressed in so many different ways. And I think what we need to do is give space and grace to people for however they're processing their loss, and just show up for people. I had a friend who lost a daughter, and I didn't get to see them right after the loss. And 6 months later, I make grief toolkits and grief baskets where I put a grief book or candle or soft blanket or sweets or something. It's like, and I was getting ready to go and my husband said, isn't it a little late? I was like, do you think the grief is over? No, it's not. Come on, I'm going to show up because they live far away, and you show up for people. Grief doesn't expire, and sympathy certainly doesn't expire. And just let people know that you're thinking of them and you're thinking of their loved one, and say the name of the dog, and name that you're sorry about the divorce. Like, name it. We need to put names and not hide out and not let people say, oh my God, they hear me, they see me, they see my pain, they know what I'm going through. They're giving me permission to feel that range of messy emotions. That's what we need to do for each other. Grief, in my professional analytical conclusion about grief, you ready? Write this down. Grief sucks. Grief sucks. It is a rough one. It is.
I see that degree is really paying off for you.
Exactly. I worked hard for that one. That's right.
Two things. One, what do you think makes people be afraid of supporting others when they're grieving? I mean, it's like sometimes we feel it might be contagious or something. Like, if I support other, then I'm gonna waking up all my grieving.
It's very confronting. If you've had that loss, I might have that loss too, and I'd rather ignore that or pretend that's not possible for me. And secondly, they don't know what to say. They don't want to say the wrong thing. So they back away and go cold or go silent and miss out on an opportunity to show up for their people.
And hey, taking that, many people, there's no bad intention most of the
Right.
times. Like,
Hopefully
people
not.
don't want to hurt anybody. It's just that, yes, you don't have the tools, and you rather, maybe you feel I don't want to mess it more than it is, and then we don't approach. But how important.
I was just going to ask, so like, I want to be more supportive to people who are grieving. And I know that they say, like, I'm a new mom, right? So like, in the new mom world, they're like, don't say, if you need anything, just let me know, because moms aren't ever going to let you know. But it feels like that would be my go-to, like, hey, I'm here for you, whatever you need. And then whoever's grieving is just going to be like, thanks, and not ever say, like, you know what I need this.
Right.
So like, how do I support better?
That's a great question. It depends on your relationship with the folks and what they might need. And I'm a card girl. I think a card, a note, a text, not how are you, but thinking of you, sending love, because you don't need them to check in or report to you, but you need them to know that you're thinking of them. And if there's something that would be helpful, a gift card to a DoorDash or a restaurant, dropping off flowers, this is the simple things, or just thinking of you. You're not alone, holding space for you. All the little messages to let people know, because they don't know what they need. I mean, do they need their house clean? Do they probably got a refrigerator full of food. What do they need? But it's knowing that they're not alone. Just
for the record, I always need my house cleaned. If anybody's wondering.
Good to know. I'll note that. Yes. just letting people know you're there. And you can say, I don't know what to say, but I'm thinking of you.
I'm a card person, so this is really like intuitively flows for me. So that's great.
And there's a million sympathy cards out there these days. They're getting better and better. Mm-hmm. And then you can make something like, and there's maybe a little book you could get. There's a ton of books on grief that might be helpful. Not right away. The first couple of months, it's very acute. No one can read a book. No one wants a tool. They just want to know that you're there supporting them. But a couple months later, maybe offer a book on grief, a spiritual book, a journal, something to write with, some type of thing to let them know that you thought of them and this is a hard time for them.
And sometimes just validate, like you just said, grief sucks. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, Tara, being a new mom has great things, but it also sucks. And like, sometimes it's like, it normalized that, yes, what you're experiencing is human, and you're not the only one. You're not alone on that experience. Just calling it what it is. I don't know.
Maybe that's what we'll do from now on, is like, hey, friend who's going through grief, I talked to this grief counselor years ago, and she said something really profound that I think will vibe with you. She said, quote, grief sucks.
Yes, it does. You get me. Yes.
Yeah. But
I think with grief, I think the opportunity and what we hope to get to is a place where we can learn and grow and heal from our grief. We go through the anger, depression, bargaining, finally acceptance, but the last stage of grief that they're hoping we get to is healing and finding meaning. What can we learn? How can we grow? If it was from an illness, what can we learn about the medical profession? What can we do different to take care of ourselves? If it was from a drawn out illness, do we want to support hospice and the care that they gave our loved one? If it's pet loss, do we want to volunteer at SPCA? Like, how can we find meaning in whatever loss that we went through? If it's a divorce, do we start a divorce group for other women or men even? So I think that kind of gives us hope that there may be some purpose and some way we can grow from the loss that we've experienced. And it can be even just better communication, connection with our loved ones that are still here with us, or more present in our job because we lost the last job 6 months ago. Some way, something that brings us some meaning in the loss would give us some hope that it's not all for nothing. You know, we're going to grow and be stronger people because of what we've been through. That's my hope for grieving and the grieving process. And that could be 6 months, 6 years, 10 years, whatever it takes. Just know that there's something that you can grow from in your loss. Does that resonate at all?
Yeah, you know, that makes me think of a colleague of me and Elizabeth and Maria know this woman who suffered like an unimaginable loss recently, where a health condition she had caused labor that was early, and the baby ended up passing after a few days. And she has just been so amazing on the anniversary of his like birthday. She turns it into an entire day where she serves other people, and it's totally like healing for her. And it's like it gets the rest of us involved in like her child's life, and leaving this like legacy of something that was so hideously awful that she has turned into this service project essentially. And I just can't even imagine having the strength. She is just making it so gorgeous for everyone around her.
That's, she's doing it. And
Yeah.
how difficult that is for her. But imagine all the love she gets doing that. She gets so
Yeah.
much support from that. Oh, not easy. That's impressive. I'm so sorry to hear about that. Yeah.
And here's the thing, we are stronger than we think. When we go through moments like that, there's a strength sometimes that comes out that you didn't even know you had it, because you have to keep breathing, you know, despite the pain, and you can surprise yourself of the
You know, we are stronger. We can heal. We've all heard stories of folks that have come through difficult, painful, unbelievable situations and are stronger because of it. And we are resilient people, but we need tools and we need people to support us, and we need a belief system, self-compassion. We need all the things. So it's not easy, but it's possible, certainly possible. And I think one of the other things you need to remember is to keep your loved ones alive and in memory. So memorialize them however you can. I'm glad she does a day on his birthday anniversary, but you can do a toast to them on their birthday dinner. You can set a place for them at their anniversary. You can do a walk in their honor. You can send cards, do picture books, all the things. You know, keep the memories alive because they're certainly still with you. So
Yeah.
share them with the world.
All growing up, my dad would always see like, "Hey T, I bet you a chocolate shake that I can make this shot," you know, and like no matter who, if he made it or not, we got chocolate shakes. Like it was a win-win for everybody. So every year on his birthday and on the death date, we all go get chocolate shakes. Even though I'd rather have vanilla, like we go get chocolate shakes in his honor, and it's just like a nice memory, you know?
Yeah, and sometimes you want to have a linking object besides a chocolate shake that you carry with you, a stone, a necklace, a picture, a photo, a faded paper, something. So linking objects that keep you connected to your lost loved one is a good idea too. Something that you can tangibly have on your body or touch or in your pocket, in your purse, in your drawer. I like that as well. But I like the chocolate shake idea too.
So Marna, if we could summarize maybe for our listeners the tools that we are inviting them to explore, or if you have a message you want to share with all the listeners who have experienced grief or loss or the pain that can come with it, any words of encouragement or support, what would you say?
I would say, along with grief sucking, as we said, grief sucks, it's also very crazy making. Like sometimes you feel like you've lost your mind, the way the emotions come and go. So I just really want to normalize everything that you're feeling is normal. You could feel one emotion one moment, the next emotion the next, and it's okay. And really, really be gentle with yourself. Give yourself the time and space to grieve, get the support that you need, take care of yourself, know that you're not crazy. Sometimes my job is just to tell my clients, you're not crazy. This is normal. Please know it's normal. Please know grief is a painful, painful emotion, painful process. There's no time limit. There's no, in 6 months, you should be done. There's nothing like that. And it's so personal. Your grief journey is your own journey. The other thing I like to remind people say, whose grief is worse? The drawn out illness, the sudden death, whose grief is, your grief is worse. Your own grief is the worst grief. So give yourself space, time, tools to really process what you need to process. Know you're not alone. Reach out if you need, accept the offers if they come in, let people know it's harder than you can imagine. This is what would be helpful, or just sit with me. I really think we just need to talk about it more as a society and be comfortable just saying, I'm having a bad day. I'm thinking about my mom, or tell me a story about my ex-husband. Tell me something that would make me feel comfortable right now. Ask for help. Know you're not alone. Know you're not crazy, and know that grief is one of the hardest journeys that we can all be on. And if we're lucky in our life, we will get to experience grief. That means that we've had a lot of love in our life, that it's painful to lose when we do lose them. So it's
That's a beautiful thought, actually.
blessing and a curse. Have you heard that Winnie the Pooh speech? How lucky am I to be so sad when I lose someone? How lucky am I that I love someone so much that to lose them is so painful.
Yeah.
Wow. Marna, thank you so much for coming here today. How can people connect with you? Not only if they're in Annapolis, I would love for them to know more about your practice and the services that you provide. And if you're not local, I know you provide workshops, and that can be offered, if they're online, that could be offered anywhere, correct?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. We thank you for that invitation. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad whenever I can talk about grief and try to normalize it. And if it helps one person, if it plants a seed or someone remembers this, then our job is done. So thank you for having me, ladies. Guiding Therapy is just a small group practice. We have 8 clinicians, and most of us work with grief. We're very comfortable in that space, but we work with folks 11 and up, individuals, couples, and families. We do a lot of work with anxiety, depression, grief counseling, obviously, motherhood issues. A lot of our clients are stressed out moms trying to get support. And of course, couples, I feel like whatever tools that we can help people with, we're happy to do that. And right now we don't have any online scheduled, but you can always look at our website, guidingtherapy.com. We are in Annapolis. We offer in-person sessions. We have a little bit of availability if anyone's needing any support right now. And then we also, when people need, can do virtual sessions too through our online system. So I just don't want people to feel like they're alone. There's always a resource. There's mental health clinics. There's Anne Arundel County. There's crisis response. There's Hospice of the Chesapeake has their own bereavement center called Chesapeake Life Center. You do not need to grieve alone, and it's much easier to have support. So please reach out, however and whoever would be helpful to you. And I'm happy to be a resource for anyone. If I can help you, I'll find someone who can.
Thank you so
much.
Yes, what
Yeah.
a great topic. And if you're not local, you can probably do a quick Google search, support with grief for your area, and reaching out for help can be a great tool. You don't have to go through grief alone or any other challenge into your life alone, that's for sure. Thank you again, Miss Marna. All the information is going to be on the show notes, the website for Guiding Therapy. If you like this episode, please leave a like or a review or some love somehow, and keep tuning in for future episodes of Wellness Rebranded. And until next time. Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with me outside of this podcast, you can find me on Instagram at coaching_therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. You can find me at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition or in my Facebook group, Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Tara De Leon Fitness. Guys, if you loved this episode or any of our other episodes, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really, really helps us get the non-diet word out to the rest of the world. So please leave us a review.
Yes, thank you.